What up, guys? It's your boy APT Songs here. Welcome to the live stream where I will be talking about the creation of my recent documentary that I released, which was the MC Hammer documentary called Too Tight, MC Hammer's Unreleased Death Row album. And so this is actually a documentary that I have been working on for like the last 4 years. And so I'm excited because when I put it out on YouTube, I didn't know how well the doc was going to do. I was like, if my mom likes it and my brother watches it, I'll be pretty happy. And so far, it's approaching 9,000 views, about to be at 10,000 probably within the next day or two. And I'm just elated. I'm just happy that a documentary I put out into the world is actually people watching it. They're interested in what I had to say in the documentary, and I did a lot of research for it. But today I just kind of wanted to talk about the origins of it because I think it's a pretty interesting story about how I came to even wanting to do the doc in the first place, as well as the various things I did in terms of my research of it that got me to actually finally putting it out this year. So feel free to sit back and relax. If you guys have any commentary about the documentary, any questions you want to ask me about the documentary, you can definitely leave your questions in the chat. I'll be happy to look at them and answer them during the course of this live. So let's just go ahead and get into it. So to start off with, I've had a music channel now on YouTube for many years, starting back in 2008 when I was an artist, and I'm still an artist. I put out more songs back then, of course, but so even though I do mostly music stuff, I've also wanted to start to delve into the world of doing video essays and also doing documentaries. Thank you very much. Appreciate the support. I have a TikTok over here, guys, for watching the doc. But yeah, so I wanted to start putting together more like video essays and kind of like musings about things that I just find interesting in the music world. And I watch a lot of YouTube and a lot of creators that do video essays that are like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours long, and I will watch the crap out of those. Big fan of Lindsay Ellis's stuff. She does a lot of movie reviews and movie deep dives into movie stuff. And then also Todd in the Shadows. Todd in the Shadows is a major influence because he's been doing music commentary videos forever. He has a series on his channel now called One Hit Wonderland, where he goes over one hit wonders. But he also has a series on YouTube called Train Records. And Train Records is a series that Todd does that talks about albums that artists put out that just were not great for their careers. But one of the videos that he actually did, he talked about MC Hammer's third album or fourth album, The Funky Headhunter. And that was the one that came after Too Legit to Quit, where he was trying to match up with the tone of the 90s and be a little more hardcore in his raps. And so he put out this album where, he got rid of the shiny suits and the pants and just started rapping hardcore, and hardcore for Hammer. Like, he didn't go full on cursing at people and stuff like that, but his beats changed up. He had a West Coast vibe that was similar to what was going on at the time. And that album just bombed. So I watched Todd in the Shadows video talking about that album many years ago, 2018, 2019. And I was like, this is such a great format. I wish I could put together something that was similar to this that I could put on my channel, right? So I already had the idea in mind to put together a video essay or a documentary of some kind, but I didn't know if that was ever going to happen. I went to school for acting. I never had any dreams of being a filmmaker. I had done, I filmed skits with my friends, and I had done tons of music videos. I did a lot of short form stuff, but movies take a long time. And I'm just I'm a person, I get an idea in my head. I want to just be able to shoot it and be done with it. And even a 4 or 5 minute video can take a couple of days to a couple of weeks. So I was not ever trying to make a movie ever. It's so much work. I've been on movie sets before. I respect what directors here in Hollywood do. And I was like, that's just not me. I don't want to do that. So how did I get about doing a whole documentary on a Hammer album? So let's cut to August of 2021. So I occasionally do long road trips. I did in 2019, I did a trip where I drove around the entire country. And when I was doing that trip, I was like, I need to keep myself occupied so I don't fall asleep. So what I started doing on long road trips is I will pick an artist and I will just go through their entire catalog. So when I was doing the around the world trip for around the country trip, I would play all of Busta Rhymes' albums, and I would play all of Silk the Shocker's albums. I play all of Master P's albums. I play just a whole artist's catalog just because I had all this time on the road and nothing to do. So in August 2021, I was driving from Los Angeles to like Stockton, California. I have some relatives that are up there and I wanted to go visit them. Stockton is like a 4 to 5 hour drive away, right? And so because of this, I was like, okay, I'm going to just pick another artist that I like and just listen to their entire catalog. And I've been listening to Hammer's album. Fun enough, I've been listening to both the You Can't Touch This album and the Funky Headhunter because I just like those two albums. But I never heard Let's Get It Started, or not the book of Let's Get It Started. And I'd only gone through Too Legit to Quit like 1 or 2 times. Not my favorite Hammer album, but I was like, okay, so for this trip, I'm going to start with his first album and I'm going to just listen through bit by bit. So I start the drive from Los Angeles to Stockton. And I start by listening to Let's Get It Started. I get through that album. Then You Can't Touch This. Solid album. I listen through to that album. And then I get to Too Legit to Quit. And I slog through that album. And then I get to the Funky Headhunter. Love that album. And I'm listening through the Funky Headhunter. And I realize I don't know what albums Hammer had after the Funky Headhunter. I know he had some. And I knew that he had gone gospel at some point. So I knew he had a rap gospel album. But I didn't know what came between the Funky Headhunter and the gospel album. So I went to everybody's favorite source, Wikipedia. I go to Wikipedia so I can see what Hammer albums am I missing. And so when I'm looking through the Wikipedia, I see that the album that came after the Funky Headhunter was the album Inside Out, aka 5. It's his 5th album, right? So I'm like, okay, cool. So now I know there's another Hammer album. I see that it's on streaming platforms. So I said, great, I will stream the Inside Out album. So I'm listening to that album and I'm like, okay, what's next after this? Because again, I'm assuming after Inside Out, that was like 99, that was like 95. And I know in 97, 98, he released his Family Affair album. So I'm just trying to make sure nothing else came after Family Affair because I'm thinking that's the next album, right? I go to Wikipedia. Yes, while I'm driving. Don't be researching while you're driving, people. I go to Wikipedia to look up albums, and there's a blurb in there that says Too Tight and the Family Affair album. As a matter of fact, I'm going to just go to Wikipedia. If I go to Wikipedia and go to MC Hammer, I can actually look at the exact blurb that I saw. So hold on, bear with me, guys. Hold on a second here. Let's see. The blurb I saw was very, very short. Okay. So it says, after the Inside Out, it says in 95, he released something, blah, 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 blah. Then it says, Hammer signed with Death Row Records by 1995, at the time home to Snoop Dogg and his close friend Tupac Shakur. The label did not release the album of Hammer's music, titled Too Tight, while he had a career with them, although he did release versions of some tracks on his next album. And then it says, however, Burrell did record tracks with Shakur and others, most notably the song Too Late Playa, along with Big Daddy Kane and Danny Boy. He says, after the death of Shakur in 96, Burrell left the record company. He later explained his concern about the circumstances in an interview on Trinity Broadcast Network, since he was in Las Vegas with Tupac the night of his death. Now, at the time that I read this blurb, it was actually a shorter blurb. But the point is this. I saw the blurb and was like, wait, what? Like, wait a minute. So Hammer recorded a whole album on Death Row Records that never got released. Hammer was on Death Row Records. Now, at the time that he would have been, I would have been like 14. How did I miss out on the news that MC Hammer had signed to Death Row Records with Suge Knight, with Snoop Dogg, with Tupac? Like, I had literally never heard of this ever happening. And I definitely had not heard the album because per the article on Wikipedia, it was never released. But they mentioned a couple of songs. They mentioned Too Late Playa. And so I said, I got to see if this song exists anywhere on YouTube. So I go to YouTube and I type in Hammer Tupac. Sure enough, the floodgates. I see Too Late Playa, and I also see the song Too Tight. And so I pressed play on Too Late Playa, and I was just like, oh my God, this is like a great song. How did I not know that this song didn't exist? And then I said, wait, there's another song here that says Too Tight, written by Tupac. before my hammer, I got to check it out. So I press play on that song. And that song has a funky groove and it's jamming and it's Hammer definitely doing an impression of Tupac. But I was like, but like this song really, really jams. Like it's really, really good. So at that point, the curiosity gets the best of me because the article on Wikipedia said, okay, this was actually a whole album that never got released. But if there's one thing I know about the internet, it's that if these two songs were already leaked, there's a good chance other songs from the album got leaked. So I just type in Hammer Too Tight album, and sure enough, I find a playlist containing all 16, 17 tracks from this unreleased album. And so, keep in mind, I was still listening to Inside Out, right? So I finished, I said, okay, I got to get through Inside Out, and then I got to hear this entire album. So I'm trying to go in order when they were released, right? And so I finished listening to Inside Out, and then I turned on my YouTube because you can't stream it. The album is streamed. You can't stream it anywhere. So I had to go to YouTube and Bluetooth it to my speakers and just press play. And for the next hour, I was just driving up to North California and jamming to some new Hammer that I had never heard before, that I didn't know existed. And I was having a ball. Like, I was like, these songs are actually really great, and their subject matter and the beats are just absolutely amazing. And oh my God. And I must listen to that album like 3 or 4 more times on the car ride home back from North California. So at this point, now I'm just like, okay, this is great. Like, this album is amazing. And when I like an artist and I like an album, I want to know everything I can about them. And now I'm assuming at this point in time that since the album is out on YouTube, like the songs individually are out, that somebody at some point in time must have done a video about this whole thing. They must have done a video about the history of Hammer being at Death Row Records. They must have done a history about the album that never came out. Like I'm thinking there's going to be a lot of documented videos on YouTube talking about this MC Hammer album. And I went on YouTube and typed in MC Hammer Too Tight history, and all I found were just post-ups of songs. I didn't see anybody doing any commentary on the album about Hammer's Death Row history. I mean, of course, in my research, I was able to find like interviews here and there where like Hammer talked about it, about being at Death Row, and some of the other artists talked about kind of working with him, but nobody really did a deep dive into the actual album or the songs on the album or how they were created. And so at that point, I was like, crap, that's something I want to see. But nobody's made it. Nobody's made any kind of essay of any kind talking about this Too Tight album. Do I have to be the one to do it? And so, again, I discovered this album in August of 2021. And by September, I was like, crap, if there's enough information out there, then I can put something together. I don't know what it's going to be yet. It might just be like a Todd in the Shadows episode. It might just be like a little 30-minute snippet of talking about the album briefly and stuff like that. And then, the songs, I don't know what level of history I'm going to find about the songs. So it might just be like I touch on a few songs here and there. And then it's like, again, 30, 45 minutes tops, right? And then I started really deep diving into my research. So the first thing I did was the most important thing I wanted to do. I said, okay, if I can figure out where the samples on the album are coming from, that would be a big help, because Hammer was known for using samples, and most of the beats on the album sounded like they had an old school funk vibe, which means I assumed he either sampled them from the 70s or 80s, right? So I said, okay, fine. So I started trying I'm a pretty good music file, but I could not for the life of me figure out a fair majority of these samples, because I just wasn't born at the time where the artist he was sampling I would know this far off. Like a lot of the samples come from like the late 70s, early 80s, and it's now 2025. So I know nothing about like some of the artists that, even if the songs were popular back then, I would not necessarily know who the artist is. So I reached out to my Uncle Eric, who was at the time 65, 66, and figured he might know a few of the samples. So I sent him the album and said, hey, listen, I'm trying to find out the samples for some of these songs, or really all the songs. So if you have any idea what some of these could possibly be, please let me know. I also sent the album to my Aunt Angie and my Aunt Debbie, basically all my aunts and my uncles in the family, because I figured they'd be old enough to know what some of these samples are. And so I think they were able to collectively figure out like 2 or 3 of the samples that were used, which was helpful, but it wasn't like, again, it's like ultimately 13 songs and 4 interludes and stuff. So it didn't really give me a whole lot to go on, The only one that I knew was Everybody Party Down, because that's Roll Skate Bounce, which Biggie's done used. Like, everybody and their mama done used that sample. So I knew that one. But the other, and then my aunts and uncles gave me a couple. But the rest of them, I had no idea. I had no idea who else was possibly on this thing, right? So I figured, okay, I'm going to just do a long shot. I'm going to post up my question under each of the songs on YouTube. You know, YouTube had a bunch of playlists that looked very similar in terms of like the cover style going to the songs. So under each version of the song I could find from all the album on YouTube, I would simply leave a comment that said, hey, I'm trying to figure out the sample for this song. If you know, please let me know. Figuring it's a shot in the dark. Somebody might comment, right? So I did that. And then after that, I just started doing my research. So I started doing my research. I started like trying to find any articles I could find of Hammer talking about his time at Death Row, or just about the time between 95 and 97. I know he had transitioned to being a gospel artist, so I looked into like that, and if anything about him being at Death Row had to do with that transition. I started looking up all the people that are guest artists on the album. I looked up a lot of their stuff to see, you know, if they had any articles, if they had any interviews that they did. Like, I was just looking up every single thing I could find, any of the beat makers that are on there, from Hurt 'Em Bad to, you know, Craig Williams, like everybody that I could look up, I was trying to figure out, right? And then I just had like a notepad list where I would like keep links of like all the articles and all the YouTube videos that I was finding that could give me any kind of information about this album. So that took a bit of a time. Like, I did a fair amount of research that September, October, and then what else happened that year? Oh yeah, so I was doing that, and then cut to May of 2022. So I'd done a fair portion of research. Actually, let's backtrack. Let's cut to April of 2022. So I'd done a fair amount of research, and I was still trying to figure out the samples. My main thing was I wanted to figure out the samples on this album before I really delve deep, because that's going to be important when I talk about the songs, right? Like what the influences, where they come from. And so I go on YouTube, and I start noticing that there were a few videos I had posted questions under asking about, hey, does anybody know what song was sampled for this song? And I got an answer. Somebody would say, oh, the sample for Down by the Bay is this song. The song for this one over here is actually sampling this song over here. And so there were like 4 or 5 different videos I had posted under where somebody had answered what the sample was. And it was the same person every single time. So me being curious, I clicked on the name of the person that had answered the questions, right? And it turned out to be Ty Lil Big. I think his last name is like, oh God, I should know this. Tyrell. His name is Tyrell. He was Lil Big. He rapped on 2 of the songs that were on the Too Tight album. And so when I just said, hey, just out of curiosity, is this Lil Big, the person that was on the album? And he answered back, yes. And I wrote him and said, oh my God, I would love to interview you. Because the thing is, like, I knew I could just sit there and talk about the album, but I thought it'd be really, really great, ideally, if I could get people on camera that I could interview for this album. So spoiler for the documentary, I got nobody. But I was able to talk to 2 people on the phone. But the first one was Tyrell. So he sent me his email information. I sent him my phone number. And then, he sent me his number back. I was able to set up a time to actually call him and talk to him. And so when I called him, we had a good 45-minute conversation. And like I said, I didn't interview a lot of people for this album, for this documentary, but the information that Tyrell was able to provide me was extremely helpful, because he gave me a brief history about the culture of Death Row. He talked to me about how the fact that, like, even though it was Hammer, people were taking this project super serious. He talked about how, you know, things happened at Death Row. He talked about how he got put onto the album. So that's where I got the information about, like, he had been trying to get signed to Death Row, and Hammer was part of Death Row East or Death Row West, and he had to talk to Hammer to get on the album, and how they were able to work together. And I think Lil Big to this day is still like MC Hammer's hype man. Like, I'm pretty sure E40 said that in a song. So, But yeah, so I got to talk to Terrell for like 45 minutes. I got to talk about the history of his former group, America's Most Wanted. I'd heard a couple of their albums, and it was just a really good conversation that gave me a lot of key information into the recording process and into Death Row at that time, how they all interacted with each other, how they worked on projects, and it was a huge help to my research, all right? So that was the first person that interviewed. So that was April 2022. And then in May of 2022, I actually took on a job at this black paper that's here in Los Angeles called the LA Sentinel. They've been around for a lot of years. It's owned by Danny Bakewell, and my friend Niel actually worked at LA Sentinel at the time, and they needed a video guy to come on and help with some video stuff they were trying to work on. And so I said, okay, I can do that. So because I started working that job, it took a bit of time away from me working on the Hammer doc itself, in part because I was now doing a lot of video collection and research for the LA Sentinel. On the plus side, that actually really was a good time for me because it gave me time to really like figure out how to do video research, how to find snippets for things that are going to be important, how to mark them, how to get them off YouTube and put them into videos. So I spent like a good year and a half working for the Sentinel, and during that time, I was doing mostly videos for them to where I didn't have a lot of energy at the end of the day to really put together video stuff. So that was 2022. 2023, I was finally like, okay, I've got all this research. I've got articles I've pulled up. I've got videos that I've pulled up. I need to start putting this together in some kind of like cohesive piece. So I basically need to start putting together a script. And so I was kind of trying to figure out in what order do I want to actually do this documentary. And another big influence on me actually was the Gaming Historian on a YouTube channel. On YouTube, there's a channel called the Gaming Historian, and it is a channel whereby this guy just does a bunch of little mini docs and video essays talking about various parts of the history of video games. And so I looked at one particular video that he did where the first 30 minutes was talking about the history of it, and then he spent the next 30 minutes talking about various aspects of the game, and then he kind of ended the video talking about like what happened afterwards. And I really liked that structure because I didn't want to just put all the history stuff at the front of the video and then just go into the music stuff and then be like, well, hope you enjoyed my documentary. So I that's why I kind of paced it out where it's like you learn about first the history of MC Hammer and then his rise and then start of downfall. And then you learn about Death Row. You learn about the people on Death Row that helped him with the album. You learn about the structuring of the album. Then after the structuring of the album, you get to learn about the various songs. And, you know, I go through each song because as I was doing research for the album itself, I realized a fair portion of the songs on the album actually have a lot of history behind them that I just found interesting. So, for example, you know, with Too Late Playa, that's got Big Daddy Kane on it. It's got Tupac on it. It's got Danny Boy. That song's got a lot of history and a lot of interviews that were done for it that I thought was interesting. And then with Down in My Hood and Town by the Bay, both those songs feature Lil Big, who I had interviewed, and so he had given me a lot of history about those songs that I then also found very fascinating. And then, of course, you have the Tupac angle because, you know, he worked on Unconditional Love, Too Late Playa, Too Tight, and a couple of other songs. And so being able to talk about Tupac's influence and his writing style and how Hammer had to mimic him to do those songs, to me was also very interesting. So that's why I have a whole fair portion of the documentary is talking about the individual songs. On top of, thanks to Tyrell, Lil Big, I was able to finally figure out all the samples that were used on this friggin' album. So being able to say, okay, this is what the original sounded like versus this is what the sample sounded like when they played it live also is very interesting. Another interesting element, though, popped up in 2024. So I ended up finishing a script in late 2023, and then I said, okay, you know what? I'm just going to set this up and just do the script, you know? And so I was able to set up my chair in my living room at the time in front of a green screen, and I filmed literally the entire script. Like I spent a whole, I want to say like 4 hours recording the script, stopping and starting along the way, making edits and changes. But the majority, everything you see with me in the documentary, I shot in like a day. And then there were a couple of updates I had to make later where I just did a voiceover. Like I actually found the documents that showed that Suge Knight signed Tupac out of jail and the contract he had to sign, which included the number of records he had to sign for the label. So because I added that in, I had to do a little voiceover. So that part sounds kind of mismatched to the rest of my voice on the doc. But the other thing that happened was, so by this point, by 2024, I've been now working on this doc steadily in and out for about 2.5, 3 years now, right? And I'm thinking, I mentioned in the documentary that I felt as though this was supposed to be like a double disc album, just because the way the interludes go, it doesn't feel like the interludes ended on a note that would indicate that they were finished with the album yet, right? So I'm thinking, though, I don't know how I'm going to end this documentary. I'm just going to end it with like, yeah, Hammer's Too Tight was so great, blah, 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 blah. And then February 2024 happened. What happened in February 2024? Again, I'm always checking back sporadically to do research on in case I missed anything, right? In February 2024, a news story broke that there were these two older white dudes in Oakland, California, who had purchased, I don't know if it was like a U-Haul storage or some kind of storage unit in an auction, right? It was like, they paid like $30. And in that storage unit were all of MC Hammer's old recording tapes from Death Row Records. So in addition to having his various Hammer pants and his various outfits from stages, there were like all these reels, because back in the day we didn't have digital technology like this, so you recorded albums on these tape reels, and he had all those reels stored in the storage thing. And a lot of the song titles on those storage reels were not titles that were on the Too Tight album. So that makes me believe, oh crap, they actually recorded a bunch more stuff that just didn't quite make it to print or quite make it to final audio form. So they were just sitting there. And so Craig Williams, who was one of the producers at Death Row, they interview this guy the next day, and he's on there like, those tapes are definitely the Death Row tapes. And you see on the background, he's got like the Death Row placards and like 10 million sold for Tupac and all this stuff. He's like, yeah, those are the ones. I remember those tapes. Those are definitely the tapes that we filmed, that we recorded at Death Row Records with Hammer. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't expect there to be a breakthrough ever in the story that I happen to be doing a documentary on. So now I'm like, okay, Craig Williams is clearly on TV talking about this. I wonder if he'd be down to do an interview. And so I reached out to him and on Instagram and said, hey, I would love to talk to you about this Hammer thing. I'm doing a documentary on Too Tight. Y'all just talked about the tapes that were released. I'd love to talk to you. So he sent me his phone number. I'm amazed, by the way, at how many people are willing to talk to you if only you just simply ask them and say, hey, can you send me your number? And can you send me your information or email? Like, it's amazing. So anyway, I reached out to him and we had about a good 20-minute conversation, and he was able to fill in some of the holes about how, like, at Death Row, they didn't really sample. What they would do is they would take a sample and then have live musicians actually play the songs in there. And so he gave me a bevy of information about the actual recording process that also proved to be very helpful. And between talking to Tyrell and Craig, I was just on the phone, just like typing up notes as feverishly as I could to make sure I got the stuff that I could use in the doc. So thank you publicly to you two, Tyrell and Craig Williams. You guys did an immense favor to me by just even being willing to talk to me about the documentary. So I got that, add that into the documentary. And so at that point, the documentary is pretty much done. Like, I've done recorded the part. I had the news parts that talked about these guys finding a thing in storage. The only problem was because I recorded most of the doc already, and I didn't want to re-record my part because it would, again, it's mismatched. I've grown a little bit. I don't look this. I look similar, but not quite the same. And so I didn't want to re-record, but I didn't know also how I was going to work the news section of the story into the doc, whereby I talk about this, because I'm like, I start my doc out going like MC Hammer versus Death Row Records, blah, 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 blah. So it can't go before that part. That makes no sense. I thought about adding it into the part where I talk about these are two reasons why I feel as though the doc would be, the recording would be 2 CDs, but it didn't feel like it fit there either. So it wasn't until like maybe 2 months ago that I realized, oh, duh, like add it to the end of the doc. Like after you say, written by blah, 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 then you can put it at the end as like the after credit. So the after credit, if you guys watch long enough, the after credit of the doc is where you see the news story of them talking about, oh, these two guys found this storage unit and this, and that, right? Actually, no, quite scratch that. So that'd have been about, I would say like in May or June is when I figured out to put that stuff at the end. All right. So anyway, but for the most part, the doc's done. Like mid 2024, the documentary is pretty much complete. And now I have the issue of how to release the album. Now, I thought about it would be really, really nice. One, I'm still also holding out hope that maybe I could get some interviews. You know, I was trying to send it to people at Death Row that could possibly give me an interview with Snoop to be like, hey, I'd love to talk to Hammer. I wrote to Hammer, actually reached out to him on Instagram a couple of times saying, hey, like, I'd love to talk to you about this doc. I'd love to, interview you for it and get you on camera, this and that. Crickets. I got nothing back. So, and I get it. That might be a part of his life where, it involved Death Row, it involved Tupac's death. That might be a sensitive area where he doesn't want to talk about it anymore, even though he does post up the Too Late Play a Song like every anniversary of Tupac's birthday. But suffice to say, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to get any interviews. That's fine. I think I found enough interviews that I can put them into the doc and it'd be totally fine. But part of me still wanted to like do a proper release. I didn't know if that was going to be possible or not because I don't own the song, so I can't really profit off the doc. I can't like put it in the theater and say, hey, buy this because like I don't know how that works with commentary stuff but I don't own these various songs or the samples that they use. And so part of me wanted to release it on YouTube. Part of me wanted to like wait to have a big fancy premiere for it. And as the months and days went on, it just wasn't happening. At some point I got a publicist who I talked to and she was saying it'd be good to wait on it for a little bit. And so I just sat on it because I was like, maybe we can figure out collectively like how to put this thing out there and what to do. Right. And so as time went on, I just kept getting like, now it's 2025. And I'm like, maybe I could put it out on Hammer's birthday. That would be a good time to put it out. I was like, no, because I still want to try to do a formal release. And, that's not quite happening. And it just wasn't coming together like that the way I wanted to. I thought about doing it in a movie theater for like a festival of some kind. Those, you got to sign on for months on end and you got to like send it to them for approval. And that's going to be a slow process. And anyway, I had two things that really influenced my decision to put the doc on YouTube. So the first one was in 2024, I did a project with this woman, and I want to make sure I get her name right because let's see, CISC series. Let's see, make sure I get her name right here. There we go. Okay, so I worked on a project with Polly Peretti. I think it's Peretti, but she was on NCIS. She was on NCIS, right? She was the brunette woman that had like pigtails and stuff on the show. She was kind of quirky. And so I randomly got a call to work on a video for her. She was going to be interviewing this woman and she needed somebody to film it. And so since people know me, connections, whatever, I got to actually go to her house because she was doing an interview and she was like, yeah, I need them to come to my house to film. So I got to go to her place and actually film an interview that she did with somebody else. By the way, she is super duper nice in person. She is very, very friendly and cordial. And so we got to talking about, stuff she's worked on. And she had mentioned that she had actually done a documentary that she had wanted to set for wide release. And then she got tired of waiting. And she just decided, you know what, I'm just going to put it up on YouTube for the world to see. So I was actually able to check out the doc that she put together. But yeah, the fact that, this big Hollywood star for a time, like had made a documentary and even she was having issues trying to actually get it out there and just decided to put it on YouTube. I was like, that's very interesting. And it shows that she really was about the art of it, not necessarily the money of it. And for me, I didn't necessarily care about the money aspect. I just had a subject that I found interesting and I wanted other people to see. So I didn't really care at that point how it got out there. I didn't care if I profited off it. I just wanted people to see this doc about a subject that I didn't want to be the only one knowing about, right? So that was the first thing. But then the real thing that pushed me to put this out was in August of this year, my best friend of 26 years, Joseph McWhorter II, passed away. Let me see if I got that thing in here. So I got the chair. Okay, so that's him. So that's my friend, longtime best friend, Joseph McWhorter. He went to school for filmmaking also, and for journalism. He went for journalism and then to grad school for filmmaking. And so he had a really big influence. And when I got out here, we worked on so many different, for y'all on TikTok, y'all can see it too, sorry. So that's what he looked like. It's my friend Joseph McWhorter. Rest in peace, Joe. He died August 27th, 2025 from cancer. Had it for 3 years. And so now I'm thinking like, look, the whole time I was working on this doc, he was going through cancer. And I would sporadically talk to him about the doc, like, oh, I'm working on a doc. I'm doing this thing. I put this together, this, that. I never got to show him the doc. I never got to actually like let him sit down and watch it, because if he had watched it, I can assure you, like he would have been a good second eye. He would have probably had some critiques here and there, but been like, overall, it's a good doc. Here's some notes that I personally have, but that's just me, whatever. And those notes would have been helpful. There are I've had some people point out on the YouTube that there were a couple of facts here and there that maybe I didn't quite get quite right. Like, for example, like, oh, Tupac wasn't going to go visit Biggie when he got shot. He was going to go visit this other artist, and Biggie just happened to be there. And then he got, like, that's stuff that he would have known because he was really into that, the story of that. And I didn't really know that part. So there were just things that had he been able to see it first, I would have showed it to him first before I put it out to you guys, right? And he would have been able to say, hey, maybe fix this thing or do whatever. But point is, he passed away having never saw it. And so, I think sometimes we think that life is just going to keep going for us. Like, he was 44 when he died, right? You're thinking nobody at 44 is going to die. I'm 43. I'm not going to die at 43. And yet and still, that happens every day. And so I started really thinking, I've been working on this doc for like the last 4 years, and it's done, and it's not out yet. Do I want to risk waiting longer and hope that I'm eventually here whenever the doc comes out in a year, 2 years, 5 years, once it's perfect, or do you want to just put it out now? And so at this point, this past week or 2 weeks ago, I was like, I've been sitting on the doc long enough. As far as I know, it's as done as it's going to get. If there's mistakes in there, if there's bloopers in there, you know what? It's at the end of the day, it is what it is. But the important thing is you're going to put something out there that's going to be as informative as it can possibly be. And ideally, if nothing else, like I said, my mom will get a kick out of it. My brother might watch it. Like, my relatives will probably watch it because, like, oh, they watch everything I do, and I'll be happy with that. It'll be 10 people that'll watch it, and then I can say 10 people watched it. It is what it is. But I just don't believe fundamentally in waiting forever for something to be perfect. I just don't. I never have, and this is the longest that I've waited, because you figure most of the doc was done like last year. Like, I could have technically put it out last year, been totally fine, but I was just like, I'm just going to put it up, and then I can start working on other things. Because I want to do more video essays. There's so many other unreleased albums I want to talk about, other artists' journeys that I want to talk about. This one to me was just the most interesting when I had my arsenal. And again, nobody had a video up about it. So I figured if nothing else, I can make a little splash in the YouTube pond by putting out this doc about this album that a fair amount of people know about, but just it's not talked about on the YouTube channel or in most of the stuff that I research, And so I just said, screw it, I'll put it out. So I put it out. I figured the week of Thanksgiving, if nothing else, people will be home to watch it. And that's as far as I thought about it. Put it up on a Tuesday and said, hey, it is what it is, right? So again, the fact that it's close to 10,000 views now, I didn't do any advertising for it. I didn't do a whole promo campaign. Like, I sent it to a couple of people with like some trailers and whatnot, but that's about it. But I posted the little trailer on Instagram and TikTok, and I posted it on X. And I just figured whoever watches it. If not, I'm happy with the way it turned out. Again, are there things that I would go back and edit now? Yeah, but I imagine that's true for like most shows and documentaries. Like, not like people put out documentaries, then people come in like, hey, you didn't know this fact correct. I know I've done it on other people's channels. Like, oh, actually, so-and-so did this, and that. So I fully expect that on my doc. But again, I didn't know I'd have this many people watching it. So I'm just thankful that the doc got out there. I'm thankful that those that have watched it seem to be really, really enjoying it. And it just gives me motivation to do more video essays, because I've had my YouTube music channel forever and a day. I used to post up a whole lot of music videos, a whole lot of music reviews. And these days, I really want to put out more concentrated stuff. So it's not me putting out stuff every week. When I do put out something, I want it to be impactful. I want it to be entertaining and interesting. And so I'm glad that this first run at that, this Too Tight Hammer doc, has shown me that that's possible and that people will actually watch the stuff. I thank all you guys that have watched it, because you did not have to take the time out to watch it, to comment on it, to share with others. Just the fact that any of that's happening, I'm immensely grateful. So that's it. That is the journey of this documentary. And hopefully this gives you some more insight into the process. Like I said, I didn't know back in August 2021 when I found the album and listened to it that I'd end up making a whole movie about it. But here we are. And I'm glad it's out there, because I needed somebody to have something out there about this. If it had to be me, then so be it. So thank you guys so much for watching this stream, for watching this TikTok live. And if you guys are watching and enjoy this kind of content, subscribe to the channel. Give me ideas about things you'd like to see me make more movies or video essays about, because I'm a creator and nothing else. And I love making these kind of videos for you guys. That's it. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you guys on the next live and on the next video. I'm out. Peace. Peace out, guys.